it was just a few weeks before the election. It was, I think it was in late August. And I was getting ready to do a bunch of stuff with FreedomWorks. And it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I get a call from the president of FreedomWorks, Matt Kibbe. And I can hear the distress in his voice. And he is in his car. And he's not alone. He said, Glenn, I've just been escorted out of my office by armed guards and told not to come back. I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, and I'm not alone. There's been several of us that this has happened to. And I said, Matt, what happened? He said, Glenn, I can't give you all the details now. He said, but we have been hijacked. And he said, I thought we had contained these people, and they had contained us instead. He said, I've never been more disillusioned. And I said, Matt, this can't get out. This is bad. This is really bad. I said, this will be a punch in the stomach to anybody who is working on the campaign trail right now. Well, what happened was the establishment GOP hacks that were inside FreedomWorks, because remember, I've told you for a long time, I've watched FreedomWorks, and they were libertarian, and I knew that they had some hacks in there, but like Matt said, I thought I had them contained. Well, there was a coup during the election, and it was powerful. And they were trying to get rid of the Libertarian Tea Party-minded power players. And first and foremost on that hit list was Matt Kibbe and his allies. They didn't like the fact that FreedomWorks was cleaning house in the GOP. They didn't like the fact that they were targeting people like Orrin Hatch. It didn't sit well with the Karl Roves of the GOP world. And they really thought that the FreedomWorks of the world and everything else was going to lose the election for them. Really? I think we were all pretty clear that it was the candidates that they were running. So they staged a hostile takeover right before the election. Well, I hung up the phone and I was dumbfounded, and I remember just setting the phone back down, and I went into my wife and I said, the whole thing has been hijacked. As we're talking about that, my phone rings. I pick it up, and it's a Washington, D.C. Area code. I said, hello? Well, it was the man inside FreedomWorks who had ordered the hit. A man who I had very little dealing with. I know him, but I knew he was part of the old guard, and I didn't want anything to do with the old guard. And he had assured me in the time that I had met, oh no, he's not, but I didn't trust him. He calls me. Now, remember this. Real power comes from having information that no one knows you have. And I played dumb. And he said, Glenn, I want to tell you what happened. And I said, what do you mean what happened? He said, well, Matt hasn't reached out. And I said, no. Why? Should he? He said, well, we had to let Matt go. And we had to escort him. It was so bad. What he did was so bad, we had to escort him out of the building. I said, what is it that he did? He said, I can't even talk about it on the phone. I want to fly out to meet you this weekend. Can I come to your house and meet with you? And I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be quite a drama. And he said, but I want you to know that, even though this is happening during the election, this is really good, because now I'm the face of FreedomWorks, not me, him. And he said, we can partner, because I've never been on your show before, but now people trust me. And I thought, no, they don't, because I don't. His face never saw the light of day on my program. And I hung up the phone with him, and the next day I called board members of FreedomWorks, and I know I wasn't alone. Others did the same thing. And we said, we support the libertarian voice. And if you allow this coup to sit, we're done, and we'll expose it. Well, it wasn't even a week later. The board took a vote and decided to reinstate Matt Kibbe as president, put in the half of the staff, I'm not kidding you, the half of the staff, all the libertarians that had been escorted out, reinstated all of them, and then escorted the leader of this coup and his cronies out the door for good. I will tell you that there were a few cronies left on the board of directors, and it took a few months for them to finally get a completely clean house. And they did that, I think, in about January or February. Now, I haven't told this story. Parts of it have come out. I think The Nation reported part of it after the first of the year. But I haven't said anything about it because I was waiting for the right time. And I believe today is the right time because the same thing, same people, really, are doing this now in the GOP. Anyone in Congress or the Senate who associates with FreedomWorks, the Senate Conservative Fund, the Tea Party, anybody is being targeted by the same class of establishment Republican progressives. They do not like it when you organize. They don't like it when you choose the candidates that you actually want. You see, progressives always they're like the Fed. They prefer to hand select the candidates themselves, and then they say, pick from these. That's why we're in the situation. Karl Rove and his allies raised $500 million in hand-selecting candidates and lost. Think about that. $500 million flushed down the toilet. He had a lot of really angry millionaires. I know, because I've spoken to many of them. Karl Rove and his cronies needed someone to throw under the bus. And of course, that was the Tea Party. That was FreedomWorks. Anybody. Just make them go away or tell them to get into line. That is why, honestly, they're not cleaning out this business with the IRS. They want that tool in place, the progressive Republicans, to come after people like you. They don't like the Tea Party. They don't like people choosing for themselves. This has never been about left and right. This has never been about Republicans versus Democrats. It's certainly never been about race. This is about freedom. Freedom and tyranny. The people in Washington that run the GOP still believe the answer is running a centrist progressive candidate. I don't want that choice. I don't think you do either. If we have two choices, we have Mike Lee, Rand Paul, or Ted Cruz, and we have somebody like Hillary Clinton, fine. But I don't want another Lindsey Graham. I don't want another Mitt Romney or the lesser of two evils. I don't want that. Anybody like Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, they're walking around right now with giant targets on them. Both the Democrats and the old guard GOP progressives want them gone because they are a threat to their power and existence. Yesterday, during his hour-long press conference, the president singled out, and I want you to listen to what he's saying here. He singled out the extreme elements of the GOP.
But I'm not going to do it until the more extreme parts of the Republican Party stop forcing John Boehner to issue threats about our economy.
You get this? What is the Tea Party about? Stop spending money because you're going to collapse the economy. But the enemy of my enemy is my friend. He doesn't like John Boehner, but John Boehner is being defended because John Boehner will, in the end, aim right directly at the Tea Party and snuff it out. You want a one-party system, then here's what you do. You support people like John Boehner and Lindsey Graham and John Cornyn and Mitch McConnell. You keep supporting the establishment GOP or those who disguise themselves as just like you but aren't. If you do that, conservatives and America will keep losing until we decide to do something different. I have even said for a long time, you don't want a third-party system. You don't. I don't want it. I don't think anybody wants one. Abraham Lincoln didn't want a third party. But let's remember how the GOP started. Before the GOP was in existence, it was a two-party system, the Democrats and the Whigs. But enough Whigs were sick of that party, and there were some Democrats too, and they said, this doesn't work. It's the same thing, and they both want slavery. They knew that thing would implode. Charles Sumner was one of the most hated people by the Whigs and the Democrats. He was hated so much that he was literally beaten within an inch of his death on the House floor because no one stepped in to stop it. They didn't like him. He was going the opposite direction. We don't want a third party. We don't want another choice. We don't want to end slavery. He did. So they beat him almost to death on the floor. Within 4 years, Sumner wasn't the most hated anymore. He was the most beloved man in the Republican Party, and the Whigs were extinct. I'm telling you, that's what's coming if we stand. Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, Rand Paul, they may be today's Charles Sumner. They may be.
I don't think we owe any loyalty to Ted Cruz. He spent the last months of the summer trying to put Republicans on the spot, trying to force, basically intimidate Republican members of Congress to vote his way with the implicit threats of primaries. He had no regard or respect for us, so why should we be concerned about him at all? I mean, I've never seen anyone as unpopular in Republican circles as Ted Cruz.
I have to tell you, I don't think Ted Cruz or any of these guys are going to be beaten on the House floor or the Senate floor. I hope not. They've already been verbally abused. But I'll tell you, if anybody would beat them down, it'll be from the Republicans. It won't be from the Democrats. I firmly believe that people like Ted Cruz will someday, and someday soon, be the most beloved members of the new Republican Party, or whatever it's called, because the old one is going to go the way of the dinosaur. It's only a matter of time.